we continue our endnotes in the second Epistle of Manuskihar, chapter 1, verse 13, as Zarathustra, not Zarathustra the prophet, but evidently some recent pretender to the supreme high priesthood who had endeavored to conceal the deformity that disqualified him for that office. Islam would differ from all this in the Jewish priesthood and such by saying if a person's not in the ideal physical condition, if they're not in the ideal societal position, then, that doesn't disqualify them from taking part in and even leading what they're capable of leading. So that he was then approved of as good by some of those, that is fit for the dignity he aspired to, of Kirman, here written Girman, see that extended to Neek, chapter 94, verse 13, and those of Ra'i, Razi Kano, near Tehran, 15, and this too is my summing up. Kapir. Jay converts the phrase into very heinous to me by reading Avir and adding Givran. I would extract its teeth more plentifully and with more suspicion than he. That is, he would drive the morbid ideas from his brother's mind. Verse 16, and management of the remedy of many diseases, meaning the practice of the Beroshnum ceremony for which the priests were specially required, of a presiding fire, verse 17, probably because they saw no necessity for the presence of fire at the sacred ceremonies. He is warning his brother that his heretical teachings would soon make the people imagine that they could dispense with the priesthood altogether. No one ever accepts any except him who is astute and evil and wicked. That is, some priest who teaches such heresies. These terms are those applied to the demons themselves in the Pahlavi Vendadad 19, 140, 141, 147. And, skipping ahead here. Chapter 2, verse 1. I have also examined that writing, the decree of Zadsparam, a copy of which had been sent to him by the people of Sir Khan, see Epistle 1, chapter 4, verse 7. And the continuance of care for water and bull's urine, the two liquids used in the purifying ceremony of the Beroshnum, see the fourth appendix. And sometimes, people used stuff that we would consider, but nowadays it's like, okay, we have better. But then again, do we have better? All our chemicals and whatnot. Because, of course, they would rinse that off and they use that as an astringent and all that. But, I'm not recommending washing with urine medically under any context. But but you do understand why the five tribes, the four Hindu and the one Persian, had that as a practice, and some other cultures had that as a practice. For when there are some who have furthered Mediokma, see Epistle 1, 5, 1, better than the teaching of Afarg from pollution, it is not very clear that deliverance, I'm skipping some parts and only, proceeding to make the note a little bit clearer. See the Pahlavi Vendadad 9, 132J, where the threefold washing is connected with the name of Afarg, and the once washing with that of Mediokma. But Epistle 1, 6, verses 7 through 9 agrees with the statement here. Verse 6, and a farg once washing. The words pasimal after deponent and pesmal prior deponent are here written alike. See Epistle 1, 6, 10. And a farg, the prior deponent. See the Pahlavi Vendadad 9, 132b. See the fourth appendix and compare Epistle 1, 6, verse 1 to 4. At, verse 7, as to that which a farg has said, see Epistle 1, 5, 1. Since the teaching of Soshans, see Epistle 1, 6, 6. Where it is the performance of the beginning of the Kaya exorcism, or, from pollution. See verse 6, and leave a comment. Leave a comment, and I'll definitely remember if I haven't already released a going over of that exorcism, because that's not too difficult as something to lay down for you. On this account that a farg is more preservative through once washing. The high priest of the Parsis in Bombay is of opinion that the names of these three directions mentioned in this section are the Pahlavi forms of the names of three of the lunar mansions. The zodiacal cycle of the month, 27 or 28 days, whose Pazand appellations are given in Buddhist 2, 3, and he identifies Sattva Haran with Kastar, and Avanak with Avdem, and Padram Gos with Padavar. The reading of all these names is, however, very uncertain. Sattva Haran is written Satta Haran 3 times out of the 5 occurrences of the name, and the first syllable might easily be read Gahat or Kahat, so as to correspond with the Pazand. On the other hand, the reading Sat corresponds with Satta, Bishag, or Satta Tavraka, the Sanskrit name of the 25th lunar mansion, Kastar, as the Pahlavi Avdem seems to be merely the Pahlavi Afdum last. I prefer identifying Avanak, which can be read Avarak, the 9th lunar mansion, Avra, Avrak in Bundahis 7.1, Avrak in Zadsparam 6.1. The Sanskrit Aslesha Padramgos is also written Padramgos twice out of the 3 occurrences of the name. Its identification with Padavar makes it the first lunar mansion. The Sanskrit Asvini, the aspect of the heavens, therefore, which is here mentioned as very auspicious, has the sun and the new moon in the latter part of Aquarius, Saturn in the first part of Aries, and Mars in the latter part of Cancer. That is twice as far from Saturn as the latter is from the sun and moon. And verse 9 is from the direction Minzik of Sattvaharan. That is, it very rarely happens, as rarely as the exact agreement of 3 different commentators, whom these 3 conjunctions are intended to represent. And, well, if 9 out of 10, if like once a year or something like that, you have a 27 lunar mansion day and the rest of them are 28, that makes more sense. I'm not sure how it exactly breaks down, but verse 10, that is to be seen as an occurrence. Gasto is a conjunction Nazdako, which is not possible. Reading Mitroma instead of Medyokma. Yet since the sun, moon, the manuscript omits law, not by mistake, and Saturn are not. Wait, we're going back. Reading Ra'i as in J instead of the law, not as in K35 and BK. Okay, I spoke too quick. And further, verse 10, on account of which, that is, the circumstances are too unpropitious for anyone to come to a decision without consulting those who are better qualified to judge, as is also the case when commentators disagree. And wise should make the decision, reading Min Zak Rabbah Satva Haran, but this is doubtful because K35 has Min Rabbah Aharan with Zak Sat written above. Min Rabbah BK has Min Zak Zato or Dado, Rabba Aharan or Karan, which is merely reading the same characters in a different order, while J omits most of the doubtful phrase, having merely Min Zaki, which with the alteration of Rasttag into Rasttar changes the meaning into the following, because that which is through the conjunction of Sattvaharan is more correct than that of Sattvaharan, and that which is through the conjunction of Paramgos, that is done, is from that mighty Sattvaharan, or that remains the effect. And that is done, also verse 11, reading Nisa, Ni, Nido, K35, and BK omit the first letter so as to convert the word into Di, Hani, Nido, which might mean presented, which I have portrayed. From pollution, there is some temptation to use the word salvation for Bugissen, but this would introduce ideas that were no doubt foreign to the author's mind. From a proper regard for your own deliverance, the ancient laws contained in the difficult language of the Avesta have portrayed from pollution some temptation toward the use salvation for Bugissen, but this would introduce ideas. Okay. Well, it wouldn't. All these people saying it presages. Well, you save yourself, but not, not in the Christian or Mithraic way. Verse 13, preeminence of that miraculousness. That is, the commentators are apt to attribute to the scriptures many opinions which really originate in themselves. Well, a lot of the scriptures are broader than, but the Orthodox, as it's called, tends to be a lot of that. So we've got to be careful with the whole conservative thing and try to be more direct than a conservative would be. Understand his own opinion. Chapter 3, which is declared in your writing. The decree mentioned in chapter 2:1. Details of the statements of the three teachings. Those of Medyokma, Batharg, Soshan, see Epistle 1, 5, 1, and 6. And for the establishment of the law of the apostles, that is the new law which the future apostles, Hushadar, Hushadarma, and Soshans, Theodastani, Denik 2:10, are expected to bring, as to restore the religion in preparation for the resurrection. But for all we know, it could be Jesus, Muhammad, and the Mahdi, right? Verse 2. Well, I mean the prophet behind the prophet and Messiah behind the Jesus story, not the amalgam that's the Christian thing, the one that was 100 years before the others. 2. on account of your embarrassment and wrongdoing, Vadag, they would give up the Frasna Te'i, washing upwards. The terms are quoted from Vendadad 8, 276 and 279. See the fifth appendix. They're thus explained in the Pahlavi in chapter 4.2. To bring the 15 times which are without ordinance, bara inako, that are after it, referring apparently to the second mention of the 15 washings in the Pahlavi Vendadad 8, 281, which does not occur in the Vesta text, the ordinance, but refers to its previous occurrence in 279 of the Vesta, but perhaps the author means that they would confound the final washing appointed in Vendadad 8, 299 with the preliminary washing appointed in the previous 279 until he obtains a purifier. See Vendadad 8, 280, 287, 295. Compare Appendix 5 and Epistle 1 to 6. Again, verse 3, so he obtains a purifier in 3 miles and more. Agakariha. After a polluted person has thrice run a mile, he has to run further. See Vendadad 8, 294. To some inhabited spot from which directions the author concludes that any excess of distance is immaterial. K35 and BK have 4 miles and more, but this seems to be a copyist blunder. Well, it might be good to kind of go away from your closest neighbors to do this ceremony, right? Verse 4, when he has striven in that manner for 3 persons, to purify him, and if they refuse, they each take a share of his sin. See Vendadad 8, 280 to 293. Be allotted unto the priest, who is to purify him finally with the better snoom ceremony. Verse 5, he who has been by the dead, and they don't mean, just going through a ceremony. Referring to the Vendadad 9, 161 to 163, quoted at length in Epistle 1, 4, 3. Look back a little bit here. Okay. Ceremony, 3 persons, allotted unto the priest. Okay. Okay, you get to the priest who's to purify. Okay. And verse 7, that supreme control, reading Mahisto,